Taylor. Taylor passed away Wednesday. He was 89. Taylor was the first wide receiver in the AFL or NFL to have 100 catches in a season. He also was the first black coordinator in NFL history. Taylor was the Rams offensive coordinator in 1980 and 1981. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we aim to foster enlightening, sustainable, restorative dialogue, and we welcome unapologetically progressive viewpoints that empower fellow citizens. We are now accepting submissions for KBLA Talk 1580 guest editorials like this one.
For the KBLA Talk 1580 guest editorial, I'm Martin Gordon, chair of the Pasadena Community Coalition. Recently, I listened to a Tavis Smiley show conversation with James Farr. James said something that caught me off guard. Black Altadena is gone. My community is being murdered. I said murdered.
All you have to do is go to our website homepage at KBLA1580.com and click on the icon that says KBLA Guest Editorials to learn more about our editorial standards and content submission guidelines. As long as the topic aligns with our mission, we are happy to review your submission and consider it for broadcast. We can't make any promises, but we want to amplify progressive perspectives that are community-focused and solution-oriented about our guest editorials. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. It's thought-provoking Thursdays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, gaining knowledge week to week, generation to generation. In our first hour, our very special guest is John Lesiotis, who is a veteran of media as a sales and marketing executive with over 25 years observing behaviors that drive public action and reaction. John is a former candidate for public office and comes to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show as a political activist and analyst with keen insight and advice. John, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. And how are you?
Terrific, Jesse. Terrific. And thank you so much for having me. How are you doing today?
I am particularly grateful that you're here today. I'm doing great.
Thank you so
John,
much.
there is a lot going on in the world. I think probably because of your keen insight on so many different subjects, I should start with what probably is the political center of the world, and that is the Great Diversion.
Yes.
Both in the District of Columbia, both now with the very quickly organized summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in Alaska to distract us from the Epstein files. John?
Without question, Jesse, you hit the nail right on the head coming out of the chute. And the good thing, I think, is a lot of people understand that right now. You're hearing a lot of people across different forms of media for the first time come out and say that this is a smokescreen, especially the DC putting the National Guard out and then taking over the DC police force. I think that serves two purposes. Number one is the major distraction, so the media stops talking about Epstein. I mean, he's begged the media to stop talking about Epstein, so he has to do something. And I think a second thing that this accomplishes for Trump is it sets more precedent for him being able to call out the National Guard for bogus reasons, but allow him to do it anyway. And you notice he's starting it in Los Angeles, DC. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't come to our city of Chicago at some point, and to New York. So I think that's twofold. Number one is to distract from Epstein, and number two is to send a chilling message.
And I want to add the third, if I might. He started in Los Angeles, which is where we are right now.
Right.
And he's now in Washington, D.C. You're suggesting he may be coming to Chicago. and New York and other cities. And the one thing that all of these geographical locations have in common is an African American mayor, or cities run by African Americans. And so it seems that part of his distraction is always inevitably the question of race.
He's been playing the race card long before he became president. I was in the 80s with the Central Park Five. He showed who he was to the public at that point. And then when he started running for president in 2015, when he came down the Golden Escalator and started demeaning Hispanics, he's shown who he was. When the KKK had the riots in Charlottesville, he again showed who he was. So he keeps showing us.
Find people on both sides.
Find people on both sides. He commented on that. So when he got in office the second time, he's much more emboldened and empowered. And you notice one of the first things he did is he fired a gentleman, I think his name was Charles Q. Brown, who was the first African-American Joint Chiefs of Staff. He fired him right away. He also fired Carla Hayden, who was the first Black and female for the Library of Congress. So he was sending out a message right away to his followers that all of these people were only put in their positions because of the color of their skin, and they were DEI hires. Along with that, he got rid of DEI, and he punished companies that were still adhering to DEI. So he sent a strong message to his base about his racist intentions.
I am very appreciative, first of all, of your clarity on exactly what the president is doing. He is, one, distracting us from the Epstein files. I can only imagine, and I think we just have about 1 minute before we come forward, that whatever it is that has him running from the Epstein files has to be so devastating, John, that he is literally prepared to reshape the very planet itself.
Yeah, there is so much intrigue in those files. The names that we know, right, that have been bandied about, obviously Clinton. The first thing Trump did is mention that Clinton was in the file 28 times, to try to divert attention away from that. But you've got a lot of movers and shakers. I think Bill Richardson, who was a Secretary of State under Clinton, was in the files, who's since deceased. An ex-prime minister of Israel allegedly was over there. A lot of rich, powerful men from around the country. And one of the connections I haven't heard yet, Jesse, is Ghislaine Maxwell. Her father was Robert Maxwell, who was over in England, and he was a contemporary of Rupert Murdoch, and he owned some newspapers. And then he also held office in the British Parliament. After he died, mysterious death, there was a lot of questions about him working for various governments. So,
John, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour is John Lesiotis. When we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580, we're with John Lesiotis. Let's talk about it.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
You hear that? That's Mike sleeping soundly on a Sunday night. That's because Mike was smart this time. He took ZzzQuil Ultra to fall asleep fast, stay asleep longer, and get the deeply restorative sleep he needs. So now he wakes up refreshed and ready to conquer Mondays.
Let's do this Monday.
ZzzQuil Ultra. Not for colds, just for sleep. Really great sleep. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Let's go! You're still glowing, flirting, grooving. You still got it. But your immune system weakens as you age, making it harder to fight flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Vaccines are a key part of any health routine and help strengthen your immune response. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Schedule in minutes at VaxAssist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
I can't believe how spotless my floors look after using the Swiffer Power Mop. No more dragging around a heavy mop and messy bucket. Now I get the same deep clean without all the work. Thanks to the powerful solution and scrubbing pad of the Swiffer Power Mop, dirt and grime don't stand a chance, and I don't break a sweat. Mic drop. I mean, mop drop.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
A smarter way to mop. Try it or your money back.
Oh, could this vintage store be any cuter?
Right? And the best part, they accept Discover.
Accept Discover? In a little place like this? I don't think so, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, huh? Discover's accepted where I like to shop. Come on, baby, get with the times.
Right. So we shouldn't get the parachute pants?
These are making a comeback. I think.
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2025 Nielsen report.
Hey, it's Matt, your leaf filter trusted pro. Gutters are an often neglected part of the home. They're also one of the most important. Clogged, overflowing gutters can cause serious problems like foundation damage or basement flooding, which can cost thousands of dollars to fix. Let's face it, cleaning gutters yourself is not only a hassle, it can be dangerous. But when you get Leaf Filter, you'll never have to worry about cleaning clogged gutters again. Get started today by visiting leaffilter.com/deal to schedule your free inspection. If you decide to move forward, we'll professionally clean, realign, and seal your gutters before installing our patented stainless steel micro mesh system. Leaf Filter keeps out everything but the water. And it's backed by a lifetime transferable no clogs warranty. So you're protected for good. We're in your neighborhood and ready to help. Visit Leaf Filter today for a free inspection and estimate, and you could save up to 30%. Visit leaffilter.com/deal. That's leaffilter.com/deal.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jesse Jackson, welcome forward to Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. It's Thought-Provoking Thursdays, gaining knowledge week to week from generation to generation. Our very special guest in this hour is John Lesiotis, a veteran of media and sales and marketing with over 25 years observing behaviors that drive public action and reaction. John is a former candidate for public office and comes to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show as a political activist and analyst with keen insight and advice. John, welcome forward to the show once again.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Thank
John,
you.
just before the break, you were talking about Bob Maxwell.
Right.
Bob from in England, also a member of the Mossad, also a counterintelligence officer for the Israeli government. Bob was quite a character on the scene. Also a publisher, and he had the power. I hope everyone is paying attention to something here. And then I want, obviously, John to comment on it. Blackmail is a very dark world. When you get a story or information on someone and you can publish it in the Inquirer, or you can hold a story with the threat of publishing it until you do what I tell you to do, or I've got something on you, on your family, so I expect you to behave a certain way. It is a very, very nasty crime. And so many in the publishing world function off of the information, the pictures, the salacious details, the stories that they've been able to uncover about people's lives, that in the world of blackmail, even the powerful become very, very weak. So we are talking, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about the Epstein files, not just was Donald Trump with certain individuals or what the relationships are between certain individuals and other young individuals. We're talking about the capacity to blackmail very, very powerful people and extract things from them that benefit other very, very powerful people. Mr. Lesiotis?
Well, to your point, we saw, was it David Pecker from the National Enquirer kill stories about Donald Trump before the election? So to your point, publishers have an incredible amount of power. They have these stories and they can choose whether to release them or to kill them. And I think what do they call it? Catch and kill stories, or whatever they call them. So they have an incredible amount of power on what just gets published to begin with and what doesn't get published. Getting back to Maxwell, There's rumors out there that he was even a triple agent working for Russia, Israel, and even the British intelligence. His daughter, Jelaine, has always maintained that he was killed and didn't fall off his yacht in 1991. So there's always been that speculation as well. And the other point is, I don't think the royal family wants much more dirty news to come out about Prince Andrew. I think right now the royal family's teetering with a lot of stuff going on with health issues over there. So I think probably the PR department's working overtime right now to make sure that doesn't come out and Prince Andrew's no longer dragged through the mud. So there's some powerful people.
Yeah, there's some pretty powerful people. And speaking of blackmail and speaking of powerful people and speaking about the art of blackmail, when you think about the way the Senate and the Congress of the United States, ideally under the founders' framework and structure, is a separate, completely co-equal branch of government from the courts and from the executive branch, you just almost have to believe that the amazing silence from the Republican majority may be tied to a massive amount of information that Donald Trump has collected on everybody, and he holds things over their head.
Well, I think a lot of them like their jobs, like the benefits, like the insurance, like the lifetime medical, like all the perks that go along with it. And anyone that's crossed Donald Trump has been primaried and beaten or just chosen not to run. He's got such a stronghold on the party, they're all afraid to run from him. I do think it's interesting, though, that Russia hacked the Democratic Committee and the Republican Committee emails and only released the Democratic Committee emails.
Wow. That's right. That did almost escape my thinking there.
And there was one point, I forgot what year it was, Jesse, but on July 4th, a bunch of Republican senators and a couple of Congress people were called over to Moscow and had a meeting on July 4th. And it was only Republicans, and there were the two Republican, at least 2 or 3 Republican senators and a bunch of Congress people. And you had the Russians, Lavrov and Kislyak, the 2 Russians that met with Trump in the White House. They ran the meeting. And there was a lot of speculation at that time that they were telling the Republicans that they had a lot of dirt on them and that they were going to release them unless they played along, because nothing was ever released on the Republicans. But as you know, a lot of stuff started trickling out about the Democrats, Podesta, Hillary, stuff like that. So blackmail it's real.
It's a very, very dark art. And it's got to be something that when the framers put the country together, they could not have imagined that almost every level of government itself can be corrupt. When we look, for example, at how the issue of the gifts that were given to members of the Supreme Court, the Clarence Thomas travel records and the expensive vacations in Europe,
college tuition for his nephew,
just on and on and on. And it appears that the stories have gone away. We've not heard much about, what's happening with the Roberts Court with respect to their ethics and whether or not, Supreme Court justices can be removed for cause. We've heard none of that. The stories that the publishers have just gone away.
As a side note to the Supreme Court corruption, Justice Kagan turned down 24 bagels from a Jewish group that was visiting Washington, D.C. And this was right in when she started her term on the Supreme Court. And she turned down the 24 bagels because she didn't want any type of impropriety and anyone to raise any questions about it. She actually turned them down. So you can see the double standard that the 2 different sides are playing on.
What I can also see is, some parts of it are actually absurd.
Yeah.
You turn down a Dunkin' Donut because you're afraid of a conflict of interest, and whether or not Dunkin' was actually going to be before the Supreme Court. But I'm just giving an example of bagels. John, what else is going on in the world that particularly interests you right now?
Well, I think the redistricting is something that if you're not paying attention to it, we have to all pay attention to it because it's going to affect all of us at some point. I mean, it's as you can see, it's just not Texas. trying to get 5 more seats for Donald because he knows there's a great potential for a bloodbath in the midterm elections. And they've done all their numbers. They've counted up all their votes. They know where all the voters are at. So they know the only way they can win again is to change the rules in the midterm. So they're going to redistrict. And unfortunately, if they are successful, not only is democracy going to be weakened even further if we even have one, but the African-American voice is going to be weakened even more because they're stripping away more and more African-American voices and gerrymandering it out. And I should point out that Illinois has been very, very guilty of the same sins that Texas and other states have been guilty of, gerrymandering. And we've done it for the Democratic side, and all the other states have done it on the Republican side. So we need to be fair and understand that gerrymandering should be done something on a national basis, on a nonpartisan basis, and it should be tied to the census. When the new population numbers come in every 10 years. So, it's something that's very serious, and people really have to take notice of.
This is something that we've talked about for the last week and have taken very seriously on our show, and that is that behind the African American, the Hispanic, and other colored people, if you will, in the Congress of the United States are the people they represent. I mean, these districts are made up of different races, different walks of life. And the Voting Rights Act of 1965 specifically allowed states who have practiced historical discrimination against people of color to draw lines in the decennial year in a state plan that gives African Americans and others, Hispanics and others, an equal opportunity of getting elected. That is, a majority of them can come together in a voting booth where people have one vote per person and make a judgment about who they want to represent them in a legislative body, both at the federal level and at the state level. But when you think about the desegregation of state legislatures and the desegregation of the Congress of the United States, the Voting Rights Act itself is largely responsible and must be seen as a tool coming out of the very segregated period that was first Reconstruction and obviously Jim Crow. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 desegregated state and federal legislatures around the country. When you begin redrawing these lines and moving African Americans who live on one side of the street with a line drawn by a legislature and moving half of that population on the other side of the street, and on one side of the street you're represented, let's say, by Donald Trump, and on the other side of the street you're represented by Joe Biden, that seems like Democratic and Republican lines. But when you run that same line right down the middle of an African American community, you could very well have a conservative MAGA Republican literally representing a congressional district on the other side of an African American progressive in the Congress of the United States. So you are right. These lines control the voices and the freedom that those voices have when they enter these legislatures.
100%. And it comes down to right now, the politicians are picking their voters instead of the voters picking their politicians. And that, along with voter suppression, pretty much is the game plan.
Now that's about as insightful as it gets right there. Now the politicians are picking their voters.
Absolutely.
Because of how they draw the lines.
Yep.
As opposed to the voters picking their politicians.
100%.
Wow. That's exactly what it is. And I have to say that one more time. It comes down to voters no longer being able to pick who represents them. It's politicians who
Correct.
can, I don't want that block in my district.
Correct.
Because I never win any votes over there. So get them out of here. I only want people in the district who represent me or think like I do.
Yep. That's exactly what's happening.
It doesn't get any clearer than that. And that's what's happening in California.
Yep.
Prompted, of course, by the governor of Texas and his mid-decennial desires, along with Donald Trump, to change the lines to protect a Republican majority for Donald Trump. And now the Democrats are in on the game, doing it or threatening to do it and likely to do it in the state of California. The governor of Illinois has now gotten in the game and said that he's interested in doing it. And J.D. Vance just left Indiana trying to convince the Indiana governor and the Indiana legislature to draw their state in such a way as to give them a stronger majority in the Congress of the United States. Again, John Lesiotis has hit it right on the head. The politicians are picking their voters. The voters are no longer selecting who represents them in the Congress of the United States and in state legislatures. John, we have about a minute and a half before we come forward. Additional thoughts on the subject?
Well, I think that that's the first part of the strategy, and the second part is voter suppression. If I think there was over 3 to 4 million Democratic voters that were taken off the voter rolls from the 2020 election to the 2024 election. There's been a couple books. A guy by the name of, I think, Robert Palast, P-A-L-A-S-T, has written some books about it. He's even got a film about the way that the Republicans have basically gone into heavy Democratic states and looked at minority-sounding names, the Martinez or Rodriguez, and anyone that might have that last surname that has a criminal record in one state was kicked off voter rolls in other states, and if you didn't challenge it, and there was an estimate that 3 to 4 million Democratic voters were kicked off the voter rolls last time. So it's suppression and the politicians picking their voters, and that's kind of the 1-2 punch we're dealing with.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to John Lesiotis on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. It is Let's Talk About It Thursdays and Thought-Provoking Thursdays on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More when we come forward.
The biggest names, the best conversations. You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams is pushing the Compassionate Interventions Act, letting clinical professionals bring people with substance use disorders who pose a danger to a hospital. A judge could then mandate treatment if they refuse help.
It will help those caught in the grip of addiction recover, improve quality of life across our city, and build a culture of compassion instead of a place where anything goes.
Adams says current laws block involuntary admission in many such cases. Rapper Snoop Dogg's hemp-infused drink brand, Iconic Tonics, is expanding to New Jersey, Tennessee, and Georgia. The rapper says each state has shown him love and influenced culture, inspiring the move. And the state of New York is suing Zelle with Attorney General Letitia James, who is Black, accusing the platform and its bank owners of ignoring security flaws that let scammers steal over $1 billion. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Attention 405 drivers. From 10 p.m. Friday, August 22nd to 5 a.m. Monday, August 25th, the 405 will be down to 3 lanes in both directions through Sepulveda Pass. Expect delays. Plan ahead, take alternate routes, or use public transit. Follow at Caltrans District 7 for updates.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers are glad they don't have to play the Angels anymore this season. The Angels beat them again Wednesday night, a dramatic 6-5 win that knocked them out of first place in the National League West Division. The Dodgers have been in first place since April 27. Angels catcher Logan O'Hoppe delivered a 2-run, 2-out bases-loaded single in the bottom of the 8th inning to put the Angels up by 1. The Dodgers lost all 6 games to the Angels this season. That alarm you're hearing is coming from the Dodgers dugout and the front office. Condolences to family and friends of former Denver Broncos wide receiver Lionel Taylor. Taylor passed away Wednesday. He was 89. Taylor was the first wide receiver in the AFL or NFL to have 100 catches in a season. He also was the first Black coordinator in NFL history. Taylor was the Rams offensive coordinator in 1980 and 1981. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You have cancer. The 3 words no one wants to hear. Of the cancers that impact our community, lung cancer is the most dangerous. More people succumb to lung cancer than colon, breast, and prostate combined. Black men are 12% more likely to develop lung cancer, and cases for Black women are rising. Early detection and comprehensive treatment is the best way to beat this dreaded disease. Providence is a research leader in multi-cancer early detection, offering blood tests that identify fast-spreading cancers that don't show symptoms in early stages. The Providence Los Angeles Integrated Network Cancer Program determines best protocols for each patient, interacting with specialists who share experiences, perspectives, and new findings specific to each case. With over 1,000 board-certified physicians, including top oncologists, surgeons, radiologists, and nurse specialists, Providence delivers whole-person care that understands your culture, values, preferences, and priorities. So, if you hear the words, "you have cancer," all you need is faith and providence.org/cancer.
An official message from Medicare.
I turned 65 this year. I knew it was time to figure out Medicare, and I had questions, like when to enroll and how to enroll. So I went straight to the official source, Medicare.gov, to get the facts about Medicare. I found answers to all my questions, and I'm ready to get started. And so can you. Just go to Medicare.gov to get the real facts about Medicare.
Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts, guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay, things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. It's Let's Talk About It on Thursdays with John Lesiotis. John, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Jesse.
John, let me ask you a question. There seems to be general distrust amongst Democrats of their basic leadership. They haven't been able to break beyond 26% and how the voters themselves feel about the leadership of the Democratic Party at this hour. Is there anything that this party can do to reclaim the mantle of the resistance?
Oh, definitely. There's stuff they can do. Are they willing to do it? I don't see any indication that they're willing to make those choices. I think their biggest issue with trust right now is most people see the leadership as out of touch with the voters. They see Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries is kind of corporate cheerleaders, if you will. And I just don't think that they trust them. So I think, yeah, there are things they can do, but it's going to take bold measures. And number one, they have to get younger. They have to get young faces that can talk about today's issues and that resonate with today's voters, because especially young voters and young voters of color, whether it's Hispanic or African-American, people that would naturally gravitate toward the Democratic Party are drifting away because they don't feel the party has anything to offer them anymore. And, we could talk about NAFTA. We could talk about letting China into the World Trade Organization. There's a lot of different issues out there, but I know that a lot of men specifically feel like the party has left them. So unless the party's willing to come up with a different message, and I think more importantly, different messengers, then they're going to stay in the 20s with approval.
I'm a little bit struck in that it just seems to me that how do Democrats formulate a message that reaches out to those voters? I don't know what else Democrats have to offer. Certainly not a legislative agenda. I mean, they're in the minority. They're in the minority in both houses. Their candidates are struggling. Their leading candidates are struggling to draw districts in their states to protect Democratic majorities. They're putting up a fairly decent fight, maybe the most serious fight we've seen since Trump's election. But what is the substantive message that addresses inflation, that addresses the issues that matter to the American people? Where's that leadership?
The Democrats have been reluctant to talk about the tough issues out there, Jesse. They haven't. One of the biggest Democratic donors this last cycle was Reid Hoffman from Netflix. And he was on, I believe, the advisory board with Kamala Harris. And he only agreed to keep giving her money if she would agree to fire the head of the Federal Trade Commission, Khan, Khan, I believe was her name, who was holding up all of these mergers and doing a real good job. And Reid Hoffman, who's a Democrat, didn't want her in the job because he wants to have more mergers for Netflix. So I think when Democratic voters see that type of message, they're like, well, they're not fighting for me anymore. You know, they're not fighting for lower grocery prices at the store anymore. They're not fighting for lower healthcare costs. So, and when we do, the Democrats do fight for those things, like Obamacare. They don't advertise it enough. They don't take enough credit. They don't pat themselves on the back and let people know, hey, we gave this to you. We've mentioned it before. When FEMA hands out checks to people in Florida and in Mississippi after a hurricane, and it's a Democratic president, we have to let them know that this is the federal government that's giving you this check. And I just don't think the Democrats are good enough selling their story. And I think a lot of it's because of the age. It just, again, getting back to the Schumers, the Durbins, those people have been in the office for so long. And it's not even the fact that they've been in office that long. It's that their message hasn't changed. I don't think they've kept up with the times. A guy like Bernie Sanders has been in forever, but I think he's much more vibrant and alert and current with his message. And I don't think his contemporaries are.
I'm wondering if the party is making a mistake by looking for a savior.
Absolutely.
As opposed to looking to not only a new generation, but a more thoughtful, determined generation whose interests are wedded to democracy in ways that the present Democratic interests may overlap, but are not wed to the idea of democratic reform.
Well, I think that's really spot on observation about, I think a lot of us are, not us, me specifically, but collectively are looking for a savior. You know, we've kind of got that mentality, right? We're waiting for somebody to come riding in, the cowboy on the white horse, to save us. It was John F. Kennedy, right, in the 60s. And then Clinton gave us, some optimism, and he was hip and he was young and he played the sax on Arsenio Hall. Then Obama gave us some hope, and even Reagan, to some points, gave us hope, I think, with the beacon on the light on the shining hill, or whatever his saying was. So you do see it out there, but right now, compare that or contrast that with Trump. Everything's a hellhole, a dystopia. Washington as crime ridden, even though the crime rates are down 20 or 30%. Los Angeles was burning down and it wasn't. So it's just, it's amazing how he's able to convince people that something that's totally not true is true.
So let me remove Donald Trump from the equation for a moment and just ask the hard question. Trump is not responsible for the current right-wing infrastructure that puts people on the courts, that has candidate after candidate running for office at every level in this country.
No.
If there is a heritage foundation, maybe we have the Brennan Center, right? But there is no infrastructure in the country that even comes close to what they've been doing for the last 50 years. That challenges, if you will, the mythology of the savior complex in the Democratic Party.
Not only the Heritage Foundation, but then the Federalist Society as well. And you see, the Federalist Society basically picks the federal court, and then all 6 Republican justices were picked by the Federalist Society. Antonin Scalia, who was on the court before he was passed away, he was a member of the Federalist Society. So it's pretty much prerequisite from the right-wing viewpoint that you have to be a member of the Federalist Society and believe in all of those viewpoints in order to get on the bench. And I think 9 Supreme Court justices, and we have 6 Catholics on it right now, who are pretty much pushing a right-wing theological viewpoint of how our society should be run. So, a lot of questions about that as well. It certainly doesn't reflect the makeup in America to me. I always thought that our elected politicians should reflect us. Our judges should reflect us, people that have our shared experiences in life. And it seems like right now we're not being represented that way in elected office or at the court level.
I am, well, I share that. I share that, but it seems like on the legal side that Harvard University lawyers have been responsible for the liberal wing of the courts, that they seem to get a different preference in the selection process for liberals. And I don't separate that at all from Donald Trump's attack on Harvard University. Now, mind you, maybe it's happened, but I haven't seen it. He hasn't attacked Yale.
No.
He has not attacked Yale, but he has attacked Harvard. So ideologically, Yale graduates tend to end up in the Federalist Society, and the Harvard graduates maybe at the Brennan Center. Maybe law court judge.
I don't think there's too many coincidences in how he's picking his targets for retribution. He's targeted, whether it's the Democratic cities, whether it's the law firms, whether it's the universities, anybody that he views as an enemy, he's gone after and he's trying to silence them. And for the most parts, most of them have backed down.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is Let's Talk About It on Thursdays, second Thursdays with John Lesiotis on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, more with John Lesiotis.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Join the Black Hollywood Education and Resource Center for its 32nd annual Sisters Are Doing It For Themselves Short Film Festival, featuring 22 powerful short films by emerging Black women directors. See their visions, hear their voices. Saturday, August 16th, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Writers Guild Theater, 135 South Doheny Drive in Beverly Hills. For more information, call BHERC at 323-957-4656 or email BHERC@bherc.org. Tickets may be purchased at eventbrite.com or at the door.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
See website for details. Bills Happen is not a lender and does not make credit decisions. Hey, bills happen. So when you need extra cash fast, go to billshappen.com. Have you been turned down? Are your credit cards maxed out? Do you have bad credit? Go to billshappen.com. All you need is a job and a checking account. You can find a lender and get up to $5,000 cash as early as tomorrow at billshappen.com. Billshappen.com is the smart way to get a personal lender now. So if you need extra money for car repairs, medical bills, family emergencies, whatever you need cash for, go to billshappen.com and you can get the money you need as soon as the next day, up to $5,000. At billshappen.com, our process is safe, secure, and all online. No one to deal with in person, and Bills Happen does not charge you any fees to use our service. It's easy. When you need a lender, just remember, when bills happen, go to billshappen.com. Billshappen.com for the cash you need now. Billshappen.com.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour is none other than John Lesiotis. John is a veteran of media and as a sales marketing executive. He has over 25 years of service observing the behaviors that drive public action and reaction. John, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Thank you.
So one of Newton's laws has something to do with every action in the universe having an equal and opposite reaction. I don't feel the energy right now for Democrats. One might argue that the protesters on the streets have been discouraged from protesting because it seems like Donald Trump is prepared to pull the trigger with the National Guard for basic First Amendment activity. Another part of it feels like any opposition to the emperor is now underground. It's on podcasting, it's on radio, it's wherever we can speak our voices and not be criticized or arrested for speaking up. Help me understand, if you will, John. For me, increasingly, hope is becoming a cynical scheme in and of itself. When people start talking about hope, It just doesn't necessarily resonate as a possibility in the present arrangement.
I couldn't agree more with you. I think that's what a lot of people are feeling, the same way you're feeling about it, because we put our hope on our politicians. We look for our saviors, as you mentioned earlier in the show. And I think in many cases, liberals, progressives like myself felt that was Obama. He sold us on hope and change and how things were going to change. And instead we got hit after Obama with white resentment and with Trump. So I think a lot of people have become discouraged because of that. They thought that the country was moving in the right direction, and now we've seemingly moved back decades. You know, the women losing the right with Roe versus Wade, with marriage equality being on the chopping block very shortly. So I understand that a lot of people feel that having optimism as hope is a fool's game at this time, but I certainly don't think that a young John Lewis felt that way 50 years ago, or a young Martin Luther King felt that way, knowing the odds were against him. To your point about the protest, the big protest, the initial one I knew drew a really good crowd. And then after that, there wasn't a lot of action. There's been smaller protests, but they seem to be petering out. And I myself am trying to figure out why that is. And one possibility just might be the lack of the labor forces being able to participate. Union participations in the past could organize strikes and could organize boycotts and stuff like that, and could be effective. And I see that in Israel, some of the anti-war Israelis are starting to do a labor boycott to try to get the government to change their opinion in their activities over in Gaza. So I thought maybe that was part of the reason that we don't have the urgency and the energy that it would seem that this moment would call for, right?
I would think, but I sense that the crackdown, let's just call it what it is. It's a crackdown here in the United States.
Sure it is.
and no one wants the crackdown to come their way. So we saw initially the crackdown, the weaponization of the Justice Department in New York. The mayor of New York, Mayor Eric Adams, is not singing the way he used to sing. He just sounds different, right? I mean, he's a different mayor than the man who ran, with the energy and strength of a full-blooded, free American citizen. Now he's dangled out there by the Justice Department.
Yep.
And then on the other hand,
speaking of blackmail,
right. Then if you look at, we had city council persons on the program from Washington, D.C., and, they're standing by their mayor. I'm certainly standing by Mayor Bowser in Washington, D.C., but you can also tell that she's in this precarious position where she has to kind of work with the guy because she doesn't want him to dismiss the council and lock her up and just seize control of every government function in the District of Columbia. So it's kind of odd in that even her voice has changed. And those of us on the outside are trying to share with people that does not mean that she does not have courage. That does not mean that she is not who she is. It just means that the dynamic of being a federal enclave and having your budget before the Congress and having to have it essentially signed by the President of the United States, that the levers and the strings that he gets to pull in the District of Columbia are just that deep. And we have to understand her position. But then we have other voices like the mayor of the city of Chicago, who's raising hell every day. And I mean, he's got the freedom to raise hell with Donald Trump because he's not tied to a criminal prosecution in New York and or a federal enclave in Washington, D.C.
No, the mayor of Washington has to do what she has to do. She has to be very pragmatic. She understands she's dealing with a chaotic president who has a very short attention span. And if she can just appease him and not rile him up in any way, that he may just go away and ignore her and move on to the next problem.
And I just want to add that our mayor, Karen Bass, has also stood up to Donald Trump. And but she's done it in a very, very effective way.
Incredibly effective.
Los Angeles have stood up to Donald Trump in an effective way. And I think that the Marines and the National Guard, I mean, increasingly we're hearing stories of people saying, hey, we're just tired. Can we go home?
Yeah.
Why are we here? We're not with our families. I mean,
Hearing
really,
more and more of those stories.
and it's not like the National Guard or American soldiers want to pull heavy war type weapons on the American people. So there's this, I was on the show one day, John, and I said, why don't you all just take the National Guard some donuts? I mean, they're your cousins, they're your nephews, they're people who live right next door to you.
Yes, they are.
Big and bad in uniform, but the fact of the matter is he can only control them to a point because when they take off their uniform, they have to go back to work.
That's right. These are all part-time jobs for them.
That's right. So it's strange times, John.
Very strange times, but we have to keep motivated and we have to keep participating and trying to encourage others, especially our young, to participate because they're really our future. And we've got to make sure that they're registered to vote, that they're still on the voter rolls, that they are actively engaging other young people to go and vote with them, not only friends, but family members that they may never think were politically active. And they also need to run for office, a local office, whether it's a school board or a local library, to get involved and see the power of participating in this. And that, and I think that a lot of those actions can help people.
You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Our very special guest in this hour has been none other than John Lesiotis, one of the nation's top advertising executives. And John, I am so grateful for your keen insights.
Thank you so much, Jesse. It's a pleasure talking to you.
You're always welcome on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, it's Johnny Mack on Thought-Provoking Thursdays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams is pushing the Compassionate Interventions Act, letting clinical professionals bring people with substance use disorders who pose a danger to a hospital. A judge could then mandate treatment if they refuse help.
It would help those caught in the grip of addiction recover, improve quality of life across our city, and build a culture of compassion instead of a place where anything goes.
Adams says current laws block involuntary admission in many such cases. Rapper Snoop Dogg's hemp-infused drink brand, Iconic Tonics, is expanding to New Jersey, Tennessee, and Georgia. The rapper says each state has shown him love and influenced culture, inspiring the move. And the state of New York is suing Zelle with Attorney General Letitia James, who is Black, accusing the platform and its bank owners of ignoring security flaws that let scammers steal over $1 billion. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Attention 405 drivers. From 10 p.m. Friday, August 22nd to 5 a.m. Monday, August 25th, the 405 will be down to 3 lanes in both directions through Sepulveda Pass. Expect delays. Plan ahead, take alternate routes, or use public transit. Follow at Caltrans District 7 for updates.
I can't believe how spotless my floors look after using the Swiffer Power Mop. No more dragging around a heavy mop and messy bucket. Now I get the same deep clean without all the work. Thanks to the powerful solution and scrubbing pad of the Swiffer Power Mop, dirt and grime don't stand a chance, and I don't break a sweat. Mic drop. Mop drop.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
A smarter way to mop. Try it or your money back.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. A federal appeals court in New York City ruled Thursday morning that the NFL can be put on trial for a civil lawsuit filed against the league for allegations of racial discrimination in the hiring process of Black head coaches. The lawsuit was filed in 2022 by Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores on behalf of Black candidates who claimed unfair treatment in their pursuit of head coaching jobs. Flores' lawsuit includes the Denver Broncos, New York Giants, and Houston Texans. In 2022, Flores, the former head coach of the Miami Dolphins, was interviewed by the three teams but passed over for the job each time. When Flores interviewed with the Giants privately had already made the decision to hire current coach Brian Daboll. The Giants situation led to Flores' lawsuit. As the NFL approaches the 2025 season, only 5 of the 32 teams have a black head coach. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we aim to foster enlightening, sustainable, restorative dialogue, and we welcome unapologetically progressive viewpoints that empower fellow citizens. We are now accepting submissions for KBLA Talk 1580 guest editorials like this one.
With the KBLA Talk 1580 guest editorial, I'm Martin Gordon, chair of the Pasadena Community Coalition. Recently, I listened to a Tavis Smiley Show conversation with James Farr. James said something that caught me off guard. Black Altadena is gone. My community is being murdered. I said murdered.
All you have to do is go to our website homepage at KBLA1580.com and click on the icon that says KBLA Guest Editorials to learn more about our editorial standards and content submission guidelines. As long as the topic aligns with our mission, we are happy to review your submission and consider it for broadcast. We can't make any promises, but we want to amplify progressive perspectives that are community-focused and solution-oriented. So go to KBLA1580.com right now to download all the information you need about our guest editorials. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
On KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour is the principal and managing partner of Johnny Mac Group LLC and the founding director of the World House Project, well traveled throughout the Americas, Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, explicating Dr. King's call to restructure the social edifice and its triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism with a revolution of values that are effected through peaceable power. Our very special guest in this hour is Johnny Mac. Johnny, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Hey, Jesse, good to be here always.
Johnny, the World House this week lost Washington, D.C. as part of its vision for building and restructuring the social edifice. The President of the United States is presently occupying the District of Columbia, undermining not only democracy and the basic functions of that government, but is sending a signal that he is willing to do it in Baltimore, Chicago, Oakland, California, and other cities around the world. Around the country. It just seems to me that Dr. King could not have imagined the personage of Donald Trump.
Maybe so, Jesse. Although I think he was a pretty prescient guy. And I think that, yes, he would be quite astonished that we haven't made more progress in the United States. In fact, the regression, the 2 steps forward, 3 steps back that has occurred since his death over and over again has put us where we are today. And it's a real challenge. As we've talked about this over the last several weeks, Jesse, and I'm looking forward to our continuing conversation, not only talking about what Trump and others are doing, but also talking about what we can do about it.
My concern, obviously, is the practical nature of what we can do about living in an authoritarian era. And that certainly isn't something that King could have contemplated. I think he recognized the value of the American experiment. I think he recognized that there was a certain freedom fabric that covered us all at the moment that he wrote and delivered some of his most prolific speeches. But there are fewer and fewer speeches being delivered now. There are fewer and fewer protests taking place now. The threat of our marching and nonviolent resistance provokes and invokes the president to possibly invoke the Insurrection Act. And this isn't Kennedy. This isn't Johnson. This isn't the post Brown versus the Board of Education presidents that we've been used to. This is something fundamentally different, Johnny.
It is fundamentally different. And, to your point about what King might have anticipated, the Insurrection Act and acts passed since the World Trade tragedy. The world has changed quite significantly, Jesse, as you know. And part of the problem is we're using old school 20th century strategies while our opponent is quite schooled in new school strategies and has, outthought and outprepared, Jesse, outprepared us, whoever us is, so to speak. In your last guest, you and John talked about the infrastructure. You mentioned the infrastructure, the infrastructures that are in place. You mentioned the institutions and some of the organizations, the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society, and others, and some of the strategies of gerrymandering and the like that have prepared the other side for where we are today. Unfortunately, we don't have those infrastructures. Those infrastructures have not been prepared, and we are not well schooled on how to prepare them. When you talk about the Democratic Party, for instance, and how it's prepared in itself and its constituency, no wonder it has lost many of those who had hoped for something better, something more responsive to the challenges and opportunities that confront, the day-to-day lives of its citizens. It's a real challenge, and we've got to figure out what we're going to do about it.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This is Thoughtful Thursdays with Johnny Mack, where we discuss the World House, Dr. King's vision to restructure the social edifice, challenging the three triple evils: poverty, racism, and militarism. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA 1580 Talk. When we come forward, more with Johnny Mack.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
You hear that? That's Mike sleeping soundly on a Sunday night. That's because Mike was smart this time. He took ZzzQuil Ultra to fall asleep fast, stay asleep longer, and get the deeply restorative sleep he needs. So now he wakes up refreshed and ready to conquer Mondays.
Let's do this Monday.
ZzzQuil Ultra. Not for colds, just for sleep. Really great sleep. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Let's go!
You're still glowing, flirting, grooving. You still got it. But your immune system weakens as you age, making it harder to fight flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Vaccines are a key part of any health routine and help strengthen your immune response. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Schedule in minutes at VaxAssist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
I can't believe how spotless my floors look after using the Swiffer Power Mop. No more dragging around a heavy mop and messy bucket. Now I get the same deep clean without all the work. Thanks to the powerful solution and scrubbing pad of the Swiffer Power Mop, dirt and grime don't stand a chance, and I don't break a sweat. Mic drop. Mop drop.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
A smarter way to mop. Try it or your money back.
Oh, could this vintage store be any cuter?
Right? And the best part? They accept Discover.
Accept Discover? In a little place like this? I don't think so, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, huh? Discover's accepted where I like to shop. Come on, baby, get with the times.
Right. So we shouldn't get the parachute pants?
These are making a comeback. I think.
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2025 Nielsen report.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jackson. It's the workforce. Thought-provoking Thursdays. Our very special guest is none other than our regular contributor, Johnny Mack. Johnny, welcome forward to the show.
Thank you, Jesse.
Johnny, I want to say something about the spirit energy that emanates from the highest office in the land. We see Dr. King as this warrior for social justice, but the truth of the matter is we needed his spirit of love, of mercy, of redemption, and forgiveness in the White House itself. He contained more spirit energy than John F. Kennedy or Lyndon Johnson. In fact, his love ethic and his non-violent ethic really defines the era. Certainly the post-Kingian period is entirely defined in terms of our interaction with our brothers and sisters by King's ethic. One could argue that it's a Christological ethic, but King's interpretation of the scriptures, his interpretations of Gandhi, have led to our direct engagement and involvement with multicultures, multiracial groups, multi-different approaches to how we fight for social justice. That's King. That's not even Malcolm. That's not Marcus Garvey. That's not any leader in the modern era. It's Dr. King. Now, that spirit energy emanating from the White House would be a fundamentally different spirit energy than the spirit energy we are confronting right now as a nation, emanating from the bully pulpit, from the White House itself. Even Joe Biden's spirit energy is different than this. Even Barack Obama's spirit energy is different than this. Dr. King, I believe, quite frankly, was in a religion to himself. His practice of the religion, his practice of the ethic himself, his experiment within the ethic itself led to a different spirit energy. And I don't see that spirit energy forthcoming either on the retribution side of Donald Trump's politics. And I'm watching very carefully how Democrats respond to Donald Trump, which I think there has to be a response. But the Democratic version of this, I don't see how it's going to get much better.
Yeah, Jesse. So, this notion of spirit energy, one wonders, where does it come from? The spirit energy that we have today, as you describe it, is one for its time, isn't it? In other words, what we see coming out of the White House is what we see coming out of the body politic writ large, out of the people themselves. I think at King's time was a very different time. It was not only King's energy, but it was the energy of the people, the spirit of the people. And I think that the spirit of the people, the movement created King as much as King contributed to the movement. And I think the movement that we are seeing today has birthed a certain spirit energy and a certain leadership. If I am right about that, then what? How do we change that spirit energy? What is it about the people that have no patience for this notion of love and respect for one another, but hold a sense of it's everyone for himself or herself, if I'm right about that? I think that's the challenge that faces us.
It seems like it needs a kind of progenitor, some kind of person to give it some life, some thrust. I've seen William Barber, who I am particularly impressed with, try to do that. I think Reverend Sharpton, by the way, whom I wake up to in the morning drinking green juice, whom I listen to on Morning Joe,
Yes.
who I then follow on Facebook, who then tucks me in at night. I
hear it. Yes.
He is a serious daily presence from wise thoughts early in the morning with green juice on a treadmill all the way to the end of the evenings. It just seems to me that the leadership itself, however, I mean, I'm at a loss. I don't know how it sustains itself, and maybe because the way in which this thing is moving so quickly, this leadership doesn't have its Montgomery moment. It doesn't have its Selma, if you will, it's I have a dream moment.
Yes.
It doesn't have its Selma to Montgomery moment. And my producer would say, now don't forget the Emmett Till moment in there. Don't forget the Jimmy Lee Jackson moment in there. Don't forget the almost lynching James Orange moment in there. So it's not just movement. There are real threats. Don't forget the Viola Luizzo moment in there. Don't forget the James Reeb moment in there. I mean, the tension itself led to the death of many major heroes. And Dr. King, in that context, is still pushing us through. And I don't know if it's the deaths that are missing, that shape the time, that shape the framework. I don't know how much worse it can get. We have people in cages being shipped out of the country without due process. We have cities under occupation. We have the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, closing. We have the ransacking of the U.S. Department of Education. I just don't know how much more the system itself can take. And we are still within the first year 4.
Yeah. Jesse, this is indeed a crisis moment. King famously said we had some difficult days ahead. What an understatement, right? But Jesse, we have had our moments. We do have our moments. We had our Sandra Bland moment, our Trayvon Martin moment, our George Floyd moment. And they served a certain purpose. How did we respond to them? And what did we do after them? We do have our moments. I think, Jesse, again, one of the things that's missing today, and there are reasons for this, that we had yesterday, was a certain sense of solidarity. And I think we've lost that sense of solidarity in many ways, not only here in the States, but globally. And the question is, if I'm right, what do we do about that? How can we regain that sense of collectiveness, of oneness, of we're all in this together, of, indeed, Jesse, the world house? We used in the mid-20th century the technologies to build that solidarity, whether it was the 3 local networks, for example, ABC, CBS, and NBC, whether it was the 3 major magazines, Time, Look, and I believe it was U.S. News and World Report or something like that. We had those tools of communication then that focused our attention on those moments, of those killings, of those events in time. How are we using technologies today in ways that focus our attention? They tend to disperse our attention, not aggregate them, unless of course you're a pop singer who releases her 3rd album.
I absolutely agree with that. It seems that the distracting leadership, the soundbite leadership that emanates from the top, is actually made for the technology that has presented itself at this hour. Now, during this turbulent period in the late 50s and the 1960s, what did we have? ABC, NBC, CBS, rabbit ear television sets.
That's right.
So what did we have? Who did we have? Walter Cronkite. Who did we have? We had Roger
Chet Huntley and David Brinkley.
Yes.
If you
Yes.
recall.
Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace, right?
Yes, we did.
So the clarity and the interpretation, while it wasn't always right, it vibrated in a way with the spirit energy of the time that Rosa Parks' story could be carried. That the death of Emmett Till still haunts mothers in our society today when they tell their sons to come home and be home on time and don't be in the streets and come home when the street lights come on. It haunts them to this day. But the way in which this device in our hands is functioning, I could tell a lie and it will run down the street faster than the truth will. I could tell the truth and it will go absolutely nowhere because no one's interested in it. And so the way in which the truth is chopped up is about all we can digest, about 15 seconds of TikTok. And the other part of it is the way in which a lie flies. It flies so fast you can't even reel it back in once it takes traction.
So what do we do about that? Again, I want to go back to your point about infrastructures. What are the infrastructures, the systems, the organizations that are missing, that help us to capture these moments, these issues, and focus our attention? These things that you mentioned that we carry in our hands are used to draw us in and shape us while we shape them. And that's the whole science behind them. How do we rethink and reorder what we do as ordinary citizens? Now, remember, Jesse, that is precisely what happened in the mid-20th century, particularly with African Americans in the modern civil rights movement. We were locked out of those infrastructures, those institutions, those organizations. And Jesse, what did we do? Well, we created our own. We created our own newspapers, schools, hospitals, restaurants, businesses, etc. These were not just institutions that served us. They were ways of bringing a social solidarity among us, an understanding of who we are and what we had to do as a collective whole in order to advance our interests. We don't have that today.
Maybe I was too young to realize how it structured itself then. Johnny, and I rely upon you for that. But and I'm not suggesting that you're old, but the things that you relied upon are not my frame of reference. I can, espouse the history of them and layers and try and pack it together and imagine what's taking place at the same time. But existentially, it's something that you have to live. It's something you've lived. And it's not something that I've lived. It's not something we've lived, for that matter.
Just to think about this, to expand upon the point, we're our own magazines, own radio stations. We had a whole social and civic infrastructure. I mean, think about that. Magazines, radio stations, schools, a whole education system, if you will. We have none of that anymore, or very little of it at all. And we haven't spent the time thinking about what we lost when those were taken away, or Jesse Jackson Jr., we gave them up. What then can we do today, if we're right about how they served our interests, to bring those kinds of institutions and infrastructure back into our community, into our lives, using today's technology, not the technology of the mid-20th century, but the technology of the 21st century and beyond. How do we use AI? How do we use blockchain? How do we use quantum computing? We're afraid of those things. Too many of us don't even know what they are or how they work. But we must know. We must learn. We must build them into the social fabric of our communities.
I agree. The how-to, is it a church? Is it a church project? Is it something, Johnny? It just seems like at the most basic level, from first grade to the present, we have to start over. Because I'm 60 now, and I know there are people who are older than me who are wondering about this idea of starting some form of development and structure within the community itself, that we simply don't have enough time, and that it's something we should have been taught a long time ago, and that we missed it. And what is the educational apparatus that is responsible for teaching us this?
Well, Jesse Jackson, one of the apparatus is the very thing that we're doing now. It's the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This is a incredibly important platform, and every platform like it. What we don't do is we don't connect the dots, right? We have Black businesses, we have Black institutions, yes, but they don't coalesce as a collective. I'll use this word, as a collective polity. So many other communities, I'll call them, have a collective sense of politicalness. That's not a word, but I think you get my point. There's a certain sense of we're all in this together wherever we are in the nation and around the globe. And somehow we have lost that sense of self and collectiveness. That's not something that others can give us. It's something that we have to find in ourselves, as we did certainly 75 years ago, if not 100 years ago.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward, more with Dr. Johnny Mack.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. No charges will be filed against the Chicago police officers involved in the March 2024 shooting of a Black man, Dexter Reed.
It is unmistakable that Mr. Reed was the first to fire his weapon, a gun he did not legally possess.
Prosecutors say the evidence would not likely lead to convictions. Authorities say Reed fired first, hitting an officer in the hand before police shot dozens of rounds, killing him. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams vetoed bills to raise grocery delivery workers' pay to over $20 an hour, saying it would hike grocery prices. Supporters say it matches food delivery wages. And Florida prosecutors say a deputy seen in a viral video punching 22-year-old William McNeil Jr., a Black student at Livingstone College, acted lawfully. They say the video of the February traffic stop is incomplete and does not show the full context. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Attention 405 drivers. From 10 p.m. Friday, August 22nd to 5 a.m. Monday, August 25th, the 405 will be down to 3 lanes in both directions through Sepulveda Pass. Expect delays. Plan ahead, take alternate routes, or use public transit. Follow at Caltrans District 7 for updates.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A federal appeals court in New York City ruled Thursday morning that the NFL can be put on trial for a civil lawsuit filed against the league for allegations of racial discrimination in the hiring process of Black head coaches. The lawsuit was filed in 2022 by Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores on behalf of Black candidates who claimed unfair treatment in their pursuit of head coaching jobs. Flores' lawsuit includes the Denver Broncos, New York Giants, and Houston Texans. In 2022, Flores, the former head coach of the Miami Dolphins, was interviewed by the three teams but passed over for the job each time. When Flores interviewed with the Giants privately had already made the decision to hire current coach Brian Daboll. The Giants situation led to Flores' lawsuit. As the NFL approaches the 2025 season, only 5 of the 32 teams have a black head coach. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, aka the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee future outcomes.
Founded in Los Angeles in 1986, litigation powerhouse Quinn Emanuel has deep roots in the Los Angeles community. Since 2007, we have litigated some of the largest fires on the West Coast. We are proud to be the only AmLaw 100 firm in the country to represent wildfire victims, giving affected individuals, families, and businesses the same focus and individualized attention we devote to our Fortune 500 clients. BTI Consulting has repeatedly recognized Quinn Emanuel as among the 4 law firms in-house counsel least like to oppose in any litigation, and we are often deemed the most feared. And after securing over $80 billion for our clients in various matters firm-wide, we understand why. If you have been affected by the recent wildfires in Altadena and the Palisades and would like to discuss your situation further, please contact wildfire support at QuinnEmanuel.com or call us at 213-443-3050. Quinn Emanuel is proud to sponsor Conversation Live Altadena Rising with James Farr on KBLA Talk 1580.
Attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee future outcomes.
An official message from Medicare.
I turned 65 this year. I knew it was time to figure out Medicare, and I had questions like when to enroll and how to enroll. So I went straight to the official source, Medicare.gov, to get the facts about Medicare. I found answers to all my questions, and I'm ready to get started. And so can you. Just go to Medicare.gov to get the real facts about Medicare.
Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay, things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jackson Jr. Looking forward to the Jesse Jr. Show. My very special guest in this hour is none other than principal and managing partner of Johnny Mac Group LLC and the founding director of the World House Project Inc., Johnny Mac. His seminal work, After Confrontation, Then What? It's a nice way of saying after resistance, then what? After protesting, then what? After complaining, then what? Johnny says he seeks to rearticulate nonviolence beyond the traditional idea of direct resistance to a meta-logic that includes direct, structural, and cultural nonviolence, each having its own form of social action. Johnny, break that down for us.
I thought you'd never ask, Jesse. So traditionally, we've understood nonviolence in two basic ways. One as a strategic or tactical form of resistance, as you've noted, of getting in good trouble, as John Lewis might argue, by protest, non-cooperation, and certain forms of direct intervention. We still do those things today, particularly commonly understood as political protests and marches. Those are important. But there are other forms of nonviolence. The second major thematic approach or way of thinking about nonviolence was a way of life, which is informed by a certain set of moral values. And there are those are two basic schools of thoughts, Jesse. I don't want to be too academic here, but those two forms of thought have pretty much driven the logic of nonviolence through the mid to the end of the 20th century. What we fail to realize is that violence, that is the counterposition, or the many would argue the opposite of nonviolence, has many forms. We talk about institutional violence, structural violence, for example. And there's a certain idea of cultural violence, imposing one's cultural framework on others, or having a certain mores and norms within the culture that do hurt and harm to other people. So these are violent forms. So there's direct physical violence, but there's also institutional and structural and cultural violence. Those are accepted principles and ideas. And if there can be direct physical violence, but also institutional and structural and cultural violence, Jesse, that hurt and harm individuals, why then can there not be? Why then do we not believe that there are commensurate nonviolent forms of structure and culture? Violent forms are forms of social action. We're recognizing now that institutions themselves have action which impact the lives of individuals. For example, think about the whole policing infrastructure, the institution of policing. It as a corporate or social framework infrastructure has social action impacts on, or social structure impacts on, the lives of individuals and groups. So then can nonviolent forms of social action that are institutionalized into the structure of the social edifice. Remember, King called for a restructuring of the social edifice because he understood that the social edifice acts upon the lives of individuals. We've not pursued that prescient idea, that forward-looking, forward-thinking idea of Martin Luther King when he admonished us that that is what we absolutely had to do if we would truly see the other side of the promised land, as he stood on the mountaintop and looked over. And so it is in our culture as well. We tend to want to fit into the culture rather than changing the culture itself. A culture that accepts certain ideas and forms of violence, that is, those things that hurt and harm individuals, as the status quo.
Like the disrespect of women, even in our lyrics. That's a fact.
In our music, in our lyrics, in our video games, Jesse, in 95% of the movies that we make. Think about how we violently, how violent we are to each other, to the other gender, how we create a divide between generations. These are all cultural and institutional forms of violence.
Yes, I'm guilty. I'm guilty of reducing nonviolence to both a tactical practice when I want to approach a social injustice. I'm also guilty of a theological practice of asking myself the question, what would Jesus do? And concluding that to address social ills, I needed to be nonviolent in my behaviors and loving in my behaviors. But when you look at the social edifice, from the things we read to the things that we're exposed to, from the video games that we play, from the television programs that we watch, to the amount of stimuli that enter our space and affect our central nervous systems, we are violent. And the violence isn't just reduced to the two categories of how I approach the social justice space or how I interpret the theological meaning of nonviolence and run it through my Christological lens. It is in the way we drive past people on the freeway and don't turn on our blinking light or cut them off, or you're too impatient and won't let an old lady cross the street, or the way in which you shouted at or jumped in front of the person in the line, or shouted at or someone who might have cut you off when they were trying to exit, or I mean, it's difficult, Johnny.
Jesse,
it's difficult to think about the ways in which violence and the way in which violence attacks my space, my central nervous system.
But Jesse, let's be quick also to say what you were saying once again in the last hour, the hour before mine. You talked once again about the infrastructures that are in place. And while we may find it difficult, there are those who don't find it difficult, who have laid patiently over time because they understand that change, as we said in last week's discussion, change does not only happen in time. More importantly, Jesse, change happens over time. And there are those, particularly, I would argue, on the right, who understand that far better than those on the left. And so those on the right have patiently followed these very rules and principles that you and I are discussing now. They understand that change occurs over time. And so they patiently lay the infrastructure. They patiently create the institutions and organizations that ensure that that change occurs. And so now we have 7 Catholics among the 9 justices on our Supreme Court. That didn't happen by accident. That's a form of social change. That's a form of changing the social edifice. That people like the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society and so many others who wrote Project 2025 took the time to understand and build the infrastructure and the frameworks necessary to implement their strategies when the time was right.
And I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to Johnny Mac on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, more with Johnny Mac.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Agnes was in deep trouble with the IRS.
I owed the IRS a lot of money. I did not know what I was going to do. I was scared.
Agnes caught a break and found out about Optima Tax Relief.
But when I called Optima Tax, they guaranteed me that they were going to help me out the best that they can. And they did.
Optima stopped the IRS.
No more telephone calls, no more letters. Optima Tax took care of everything. I can finally sleep at night. I was stress-free.
Agnes was finally free from her IRS nightmare.
It was like a burden was was lifted off of me, and it was a great feeling.
Are you in deep trouble with the IRS? You might want to listen to Agnes.
I would refer Optima Tax Relief to anyone because they got me debt-free from owing the IRS any more money.
Call Optima right now for your free consultation. Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Lena Bloom for the Bail Project. Imagine you're stuck in a jail cell and you can't afford bail and someone offers you a way out. Just plead guilty and you can go home and kiss your kids goodnight. What do? What thousands have. You plead guilty whether you are or not. Cash bail makes poverty a crime. That's why the Bail Project helps those who can't afford it while fighting to end cash bail, because freedom should be free. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Ready to order?
Yes. We're earning unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with the Capital One Saver card. So let's just get one of everything.
Everything?
Fire everything. The Capital One Saver card is at table 27 and they're earning unlimited 3% cash back.
Yes, Chef! This is so nice.
Had a feeling you'd want 3% cash back on dessert.
Ooh, tiramisu.
Earn unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with the Capital One Saver card. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This is Thought Provoking Thursdays with none other than Johnny Mack. Johnny Mack shares with us his vision, largely from that of Martin Luther King Jr. regarding the World House. And Johnny has done some extraordinary reflection and work in this area that we have to take into account. It just simply cannot be ignored. Johnny, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr.
Thank you, Jesse.
Johnny, we were saying just before we came forward, and I realize this is our final segment, that the dive that you have undertaken is far deeper than the nonviolence as a tactic in the approach to confrontation, and nonviolence just as a theological practice through the theological lens of, I guess Jesus would be nonviolent. Now we've seen this guy overturn some tables too. Right. We've seen him crucified on a cross with nails in his hands and a spear in his side and nails in his feet and a crown of thorns on his head. So there's Barabbas. There is this activity that's taking place in the midst of Jesus's ministry that also matters the context of what's taking place under the occupation of Roman Empire, which in and of itself was violent. So a colonized people find themselves, by virtue of the fact that they are colonized, in a state of violence. Johnny, I'd like you to finish the thought that you were making just before we came forward.
Yeah. So if we view violence only as a direct physical phenomenon in the human experience. That is, one has to physically attack me. Then we limit our understanding of those things that cause hurt and harm in our lives. But in fact, we don't limit violence to that direct action. Now, notice that the words I use here, Jesse, we normally talk about nonviolence and direct action. But here, we're talking about violence and its direct action. In other words, both violence and nonviolence have forms of direct action. If that's the case, and we understand that violence also has forms of, or also has structural and institutional forms, then we can also surmise or conclude that nonviolence has structural and institutional forms. And if we can understand, once again, that culture has violence and forms within its framework, we can understand the same with nonviolence. This is the whole idea of a metalogic of nonviolence. It's understanding the counterposition or the opposites of each of those forms, whether it's direct, structural, or cultural. Now, Jesse, we have to spend the time educating ourselves with that framework. Otherwise, if we don't know what causes our cancer, to use an example or a metaphor, then we don't know how to diagnose it and treat it. And such is the case with the cancer of poverty, racism, and militarism, and how it is ruining and destroying the body politic of our political lives, how it's destroying the social edifice itself. That was King's argument. And platforms like this, I would argue once again, Jesse, are where we can diffuse, we can disseminate, we can discuss, deliberate, and decide on how we can change that social structure.
I'm grateful. That's when I first met Johnny a number of years ago. He shared with me his thinking, and of course, Tavis was kind enough to grant me this wonderful opportunity on KBLA. And one of the first people that our producer, Gina Towns, reached out to was Johnny Mack. And Johnny had so much to share, but we wanted to make sure here on KBLA, and as the show hopefully expands, we wanted to make Johnny's voice part of that very platform, to use this vehicle as part of that education process. Johnny, it's Thursday, but last Thursday I felt like I just talked with you yesterday, and the Thursdays are now beginning to run together so quickly that and so much is going on. I'm hopeful that next Thursday might provide us with a little bit of a respite to take a deeper dive into this question of the metalogic. We have about 4 minutes before the close of the show. Johnny, a word of hope and your final thoughts.
Word of hope in 4 minutes. Well, you know, there was the famous quote of one wise sage who would often say, "Keep hope alive."
Not him.
Yes, indeed. And Jesse, that's each of our responsibilities. We've got to keep hope alive. And that's not something that we simply muse about or dream about. That requires direct action. It requires structural action, and it requires cultural action. How do we build hope in our culture? In our culture? How do we build hope in the structures that mediate our interaction with each other? And how do we incorporate hope in our direct action between each other? We must answer those questions, and we must work to make them happen. When you think about the church, you think about our social media that we control. How much hope are we fostering and explaining and engaging in those platforms and processes? I think we have to keep hope alive, Jesse.
I think that's profound, and I've heard it somewhere before. Johnny Mac, you're the very best. Welcome to our show, and I can't wait for you to return next Thursday.
I look forward to it, Jesse. I look forward to that deeper dive into this whole idea of nonviolence.
That's going to happen. You know, one of the great tragedies of our generation is that we did not benefit from the life of Martin Luther King Jr. April 4th, 1965, Dr. King departed us in Memphis, Tennessee in 1968, triggering a series of events in the body politic of our nation that we have not recovered from as a nation.
That's right.
The reaction to the nonviolent dreamer, the dreamer with the meta logic beyond that which we could understand, left us in riots, in dismay, in the middle of an ugly war. The wealthiest nation in the history of the world was dropping bombs on the poorest people in Vietnam. We had to brave that brand new world by ourselves without our king. And so much of this exercise is about the resurrection of our king, not King Trump, not King George, not King David. Oh, yes, King Jesus, but also in the form that Martin Luther King Jr. delivered the practice of his life to us matters in the way in which not only we see ourselves, but it matters in the way in which we see our neighbors. So grateful to Johnny Mac for this hour that he gives our show and our nation every week. So grateful for all of our contributors in a real sense. So much of our show this week, before we go to Fat Meat Fridays on Fridays with our producer Gina Towns, so much of what we learned this week comes together in Johnny Mac. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Until tomorrow.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.